Somewhere around my 43rd birthday, I stopped being able to get off the floor without making a sound. Not a groan exactly, more like the noise a door makes when the hinges have been dry for 20 years. My knees crackled, my hips locked, my ankles felt like they were wrapped in wet cement every morning. I'd done the stretching routines, the foam rolling, the collagen powders that tasted like someone dissolved a shoe in vanilla flavoring. Nothing held. And the thing nobody tells you is that the stiffness doesn't arrive all at once. It creeps. One morning you're fine, and then one morning you're negotiating with your own body just to stand up straight. So when I came across a reference buried inside a Hermetic text, a passage describing what the ancient scribes attributed to Thoth, the god of wisdom and sacred knowledge, describing a precise protocol for restoring what they called the living chords of the body, I didn't approach it as mythology. I approached it as a lead. 30 days, one protocol, every morning before anything else. What happened across those 30 days changed how I understand the body, how I understand ancient knowledge, and honestly, how I understand time. Because by the end, I wasn't moving like a man who had been negotiating with his joints. I was moving like someone who had quietly stolen a decade back. Here is something that gets lost when people talk about Thoth. They get so absorbed in the mysticism, the Emerald Tablet, the association with Hermes Trismegistus, that they forget what Thoth was actually the god of. Not just wisdom in the abstract, not just writing and secret knowledge. Thoth was the divine physician, the one who reassembled Osiris after his body was torn apart, the one Egyptian texts credit with restoring what had been broken. When the ancient Egyptians wanted to invoke healing, real, physical, structural healing, they invoked Thoth. That detail matters enormously for what comes next. I'm Daniel, and this is Hermetic Talk, and the episode that got me obsessed with this in the first place was our deep dive into the Kabbalian's principle of rhythm. A viewer named Marcus left a comment that stopped me cold. He wrote, "The ancients didn't separate the metaphysical from the biological. They were the same conversation." He was more right than he probably knew. The Hermetic tradition, which traces a direct lineage back to the attributed teachings of Thoth, operates on the principle of correspondence. As above, so below. As within, so without. Before we continue, I want to show you something that could completely change how you see reality. Most people spend years collecting fragments of knowledge without ever finding the complete picture. That's exactly why we built the Reality Codex. It brings together the core principles behind manifestation, Hermetic philosophy, consciousness, and reality creation into one practical system. If you've enjoyed the teachings we've explored on this channel, you're going to love what's inside. You can find it through the link in the description below or by scanning the QR code on your screen. I'll give you a second to do that. Most people apply that principle to consciousness, to the cosmos, to the relationship between mind and universe. But the ancient practitioners applied it ruthlessly to the physical body. The tendons, those dense, fibrous cables that connect muscle to bone, were not seen as mere mechanical components. They were described in certain esoteric anatomical traditions as the body's living chords, the physical expression of a deeper organizing intelligence. When the cords dried, tightened, or lost their capacity to transmit force fluidly, it wasn't just a structural problem. It was a sign that something in the body's deeper correspondence had gone quiet. Now here is where the physiology catches up with the philosophy. Modern connective tissue research has confirmed what is genuinely shocking about tendons. They are among the most metabolically slow tissues in the human body. Their collagen turnover rate is measured not in days or weeks, but in years. They receive relatively little direct blood supply. They depend instead on a process called fluid exchange, the mechanical compression and release of the tissue itself to flush out waste products and pull in nutrients. If you stop moving in the full, varied range your tendons were designed for, they don't just weaken, they literally dehydrate at a cellular level. The ground substance, the gel-like matrix that keeps collagen fibers supple and sliding, begins to thin. Cross-links form between fibers that should remain separate. The tissue becomes, in the truest sense of the word, stiff. Not because you're old, because the cords have gone dry. Thoth's attributed protocol, as reconstructed from Hermetic source material and cross-referenced with what practitioners in certain esoteric lineages have preserved, addresses this directly. It isn't a stretching routine, it is a rehydration sequence. The distinction is critical. Stretching pulls on the tissue longitudinally. Rehydration works through what modern researchers call tensegrity loading, applying multi-directional, low-force mechanical stress that pumps the ground substance the way squeezing a sponge pumps water. The ancient scribes described this as waking the cords from their sleep. The modern sports medicine literature would describe it as mechanotransduction, using movement to trigger cellular repair signals inside connective tissue. Same principle, different vocabularies. The Hermetic framework and the biological framework are, quite literally, describing the same phenomenon. I want to be precise here because vague wellness advice is everywhere and it helps nobody. The protocol I followed has 5 components, and the sequence matters as much as the components themselves. Thoth's teachings, at least as they've been reconstructed in the Hermetic tradition, are obsessive about sequence. The principle of rhythm isn't just philosophical. It describes the order in which natural processes unfold. You don't skip steps. You don't reorder them for convenience. The body, like any system governed by Hermetic law, responds to rhythm, not randomness. The first component is thermal preparation. Before any mechanical work is applied to the tendons, the tissue temperature has to rise. Not through exercise, through deliberate warmth. In the ancient context, this was done with warm oil applied to the major tendon junctions: the Achilles, the patellar, the hip flexor insertions, the wrist extensors. Modern translation: a warm compress or warm shower focused on those sites for 8 to 10 minutes. This isn't comfort, it's chemistry. Collagen becomes measurably more pliable at slightly elevated temperatures, and the viscosity of the ground substance decreases, meaning fluid can move more freely through the tissue. The second component is what the protocol calls cord awakening, a series of slow, controlled movements that take each major tendon through its full range of motion under minimal load. I personally think this is the most underrated part of the entire sequence. Not because it feels dramatic, it doesn't, but because this is the step where the fluid exchange actually begins. These aren't power movements. They're barely movements at all from the outside. 30 seconds at end range, gentle oscillations. The feeling, when you're doing it right, is less like stretching and more like ringing. Like something is being squeezed and released deep inside the tissue, which is exactly what's happening. The third component is compression loading. This is where the Hermetic concept of polarity comes in, the principle that every state has its opposite, and that health lies not in eliminating one pole, but in rhythmically moving between them. Tendons need both tension and compression to fully rehydrate. The protocol uses isometric holds, positions where the tendon is under load but not moving, held for periods of 45 to 90 seconds. The research on this is remarkable. Isometric tendon loading triggers a significant analgesic effect within the tissue, reduces the inflammatory signaling that contributes to stiffness, and, critically, stimulates collagen synthesis. The ancient scribes called this pressing the cord into wakefulness. The biomechanists call it mechanotransduction. I've started to think of them as the same sentence written in different languages. The fourth component is hydration, literal systemic water intake, timed in a specific window around the protocol. This one gets dismissed as obvious, but the timing matters. Connective tissue is most receptive to pulling fluid back into its matrix immediately following mechanical loading. The protocol specifies drinking a significant volume of water in the 30-minute window after completing the movement sequence. Not during, after. This is when the tissue's hydraulic demand is highest, and when systemic hydration actually reaches the tendon matrix most efficiently. The fifth component is grounding stillness, a period of complete rest in a specific position that places the major tendons in a neutral, unloaded state while the body integrates what's just occurred. The Hermetic tradition calls this the moment of reception. The nervous system is allowed to register the new positional information. The tissues are allowed to settle without further mechanical interference. In practical terms, 10 minutes lying flat, legs slightly elevated, arms loose. I did this every morning for 30 days without exception. And I want to tell you about what actually happened, not the headline version, the real version. The first week was unremarkable. I'll be honest about that. Day 1 through day 7, the main thing I noticed was that the protocol took longer than I expected, about 45 minutes end to end, and that my body resisted the end range positions in a way that felt almost territorial, like the tissue had forgotten it was supposed to move that way. There was no pain, just resistance, a deep, dull reluctance that I recognized from years of ignoring it. Week 2 was when something shifted. I spent an afternoon researching the anatomical details of the Achilles tendon for a related piece I was working on. And I remember sitting at my desk for about 3 hours straight, and then standing up and realizing, halfway to the kitchen, that I hadn't made the sound. The door hinge sound. I stood there in the hallway for a moment, trying to figure out if it was a coincidence. It happened again the next day. And the day after that. The ankles were moving differently, not dramatically, quietly, like something had been oiled that I'd stopped noticing was dry. By week 3, the changes had migrated upward. The hips, which had been the source of most of my morning negotiations, were no longer requiring a warming up period before they functioned normally. I was waking up mobile, not pain-free in some miraculous sense, but structurally available in a way I hadn't been in years. My range of motion in the hip flexors had increased noticeably. The tightness that used to appear by mid-afternoon when I'd been sitting had reduced dramatically. And something else, something harder to quantify, was different in how I carried myself. The posture had changed. Not because I was trying to stand differently, because the connective tissue was no longer pulling everything forward and down. Week 4, I asked my wife to watch me walk across the room. She looked at me for a moment and said, "You're not limping." I didn't know I'd been limping, but apparently there had been a subtle compensation in my left hip that had become invisible to me over years of accommodation, and now it was gone. That comment landed harder than any biometric measurement could have. Here's what I've come to believe after 30 days and considerable research. The ancient world understood something about biological maintenance that the modern fitness industry systematically ignores. We have built an entire culture around intensity, the hardest workout, the maximum load, the most aggressive intervention. And in doing so, we've almost completely forgotten the science of slow repair. Tendons don't respond to intensity the way muscles do. They respond to rhythm, to consistency, to the patient, repeated application of low-load mechanical stress over time. This is not a metaphor. This is collagen biology. And the Hermetic principle of rhythm, the idea that everything moves in cycles, that restoration follows exertion, that the tide must go out before it comes in, maps onto this biology with a precision that I find genuinely difficult to dismiss as coincidence. The Emerald Tablet says, "What is below is like that which is above, and what is above is like that which is below, to accomplish the miracle of one thing." The one thing in this context is not mystical transformation in the abstract. It's the body. Specifically, the dense, underappreciated, metabolically slow connective tissue that holds the whole structure together and that quietly decides, based on how you treat it, whether you move like someone in the middle of your life or someone at the end of it. Thoth was the god of restoration, the god of the body's capacity to reassemble itself. And the protocol attributed to his teachings is not asking you to believe anything mystical. It's asking you to apply rhythm, patience, warmth, compression, and hydration to the parts of your body that everyone else has been forgetting. Do that for 30 days, seriously, without skipping, without reordering, without deciding you know better than the sequence, and then tell me whether 10 years is too strong a claim. Because when I stand up from this chair, I don't make the sound anymore. And that, for me, was everything.